Staff Sergeant Maya Chen adjusted her headset with practiced precision, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as streams of intercepted communications filled her screen. The intelligence center hummed with quiet efficiency, banks of monitors casting blue light across focused faces. Maya had earned her place here through meticulous work and an uncanny ability to spot patterns others missed, though few truly understood the depth of her training. Colonel Martinez approached her station, his boots clicking against the polished floor. "Maya, I need your assessment on the northern sector intercepts," he said, leaning over her shoulder to examine the data cascading down her monitors. Maya highlighted several communication clusters, her voice steady as she explained the enemy movement patterns she had identified. The colonel nodded approvingly, but Maya caught the familiar look in his eyes, the same expression she had seen countless times. Competent, reliable Maya. Good at her job, nothing more. The briefing room filled quickly that afternoon, maps covering every surface as the mission parameters took shape. Maya listened intently as the colonel outlined the reconnaissance mission, her mind already processing logistics and contingencies. "We need intelligence on their forward positions," he continued, his finger tracing routes on the tactical display. Maya raised her hand quietly. "Sir, the communication patterns suggest they have shifted their primary base," she said, indicating areas on the map where signal density had changed. "Where in the world are you watching from and what time is it there? Sometimes we all have hidden depths that others do not see at first glance." The helicopter blades chopped through the pre-dawn darkness as Maya checked her equipment one final time. Her pack contained standard reconnaissance gear, but hidden beneath regulation items lay tools few knew she carried. Language cards in 3 regional dialects, specialized communication devices, and survival equipment that spoke to training far beyond her official record. Sergeant Torres glanced at her modest loadout and shook his head. "You sure that is enough gear, Chen?" he asked with a grin. Maya simply nodded, her calm exterior masking years of preparation for exactly this type of mission. The insertion point appeared below them, a clearing surrounded by dense forest that would provide cover for their approach. Maya felt the familiar surge of adrenaline as the helicopter descended, her senses sharpening as she transitioned from analyst to field operative. The colonel had assigned her to the mission as an intelligence specialist, someone to interpret intercepted communications and provide technical support. What he did not know was that Maya had requested additional training during every leave, attending courses that pushed far beyond her official military occupation specialty. The team hit the ground running, their boots silent on the forest floor as they moved toward the target area. Maya took point on the electronic surveillance, her equipment quickly identifying enemy communication frequencies. The signals were stronger than expected, indicating a larger presence than their intelligence had suggested. She hand-signaled the team leader, pointing toward a ridge where the transmission sources seemed concentrated. Her mind raced through tactical possibilities, drawing on knowledge she had never revealed to her superiors. As they moved deeper into enemy territory, Maya began to understand that this mission would test every skill she possessed. The enemy patrol appeared without warning, their voices carrying through the morning mist as Maya and her team crouched behind fallen logs. 8 soldiers moved in practiced formation, their weapons ready as they swept the area methodically. Maya pressed herself against the damp earth, her breathing controlled as she counted their positions and noted their equipment. These were not regular infantry, she realized, recognizing the specialized gear and disciplined movement patterns of elite units. Team leader Staff Sergeant Williams motioned for the squad to fall back, but the enemy patrol had already begun to spread out, cutting off their primary escape route. Maya watched as Williams made the tactical decision that would save most of his team, signaling for them to move east while he created a distraction. In the chaos that followed, gunfire erupted across the forest clearing, muzzle flashes strobing through the trees like deadly lightning. Maya found herself separated from the others, the sound of pursuit growing closer as she moved deeper into unfamiliar terrain. Her radio crackled with static, then went silent as enemy jamming equipment overwhelmed their frequencies. For the first time in her military career, she was completely alone behind enemy lines with no communication to base and no backup coming. The weight of her situation settled over her like a cold blanket, but instead of panic, Maya felt something else entirely. Years of hidden training began to surface as her mind shifted into survival mode. She moved through the underbrush with practiced stealth, her steps silent as she navigated by memory and instinct. The enemy voices faded behind her, but Maya knew they would not give up easily. Back at base, the silence from Maya's team stretched into hours of growing concern. Colonel Martinez paced the command center, his eyes fixed on the communication board where Maya's call sign remained ominously quiet. The last transmission had been Williams reporting contact with enemy forces, followed by static and then nothing. Search and rescue protocols demanded they wait for confirmation, but every passing minute made recovery less likely. Lieutenant Kim approached with the preliminary assessment, her face grim as she delivered the news. "Sir, we have confirmed Kia on Williams and 2 others from the patrol," she reported quietly. No sign of Chen or Martinez from the reconnaissance team, but given the enemy presence in that sector, the colonel finished the sentence with a heavy sigh. Maya's name joined the others on the presumed casualties list, another intelligence specialist who had paid the ultimate price for gathering information. Meanwhile, miles away in enemy territory, Maya crouched beside a mountain stream, using techniques she had learned during survival training that did not appear anywhere in her official records. She moved with the flowing water to mask her footprints, her mind calculating distances and timing as she planned her next moves. The enemy search parties had grown more systematic, their voices echoing off the rocky canyon walls as they expanded their sweep patterns. Maya understood that her only chance of survival lay in skills she had never been authorized to use. She began to shed her identity as a simple intelligence analyst, becoming something far more dangerous. The transformation would either save her life or ensure her capture, but staying hidden was no longer an option. Maya pressed herself against the cold stone wall as voices approached, her heart hammering as she recognized the dialect. 2 enemy soldiers walked past her hiding spot, their conversation revealing details that made her blood run cold. They spoke of troop movements, supply routes, and something else that made her breath catch. A massive coordinated attack planned for dawn, targeting the very base that had already written her off as dead. She waited until their footsteps faded before emerging from the shadows, her mind racing through the implications of what she had overheard. The intelligence was critical, but she was presumed dead with no way to communicate it back to her unit. Maya made a decision that would have terrified her just days earlier. She would have to get closer to the enemy command structure, close enough to gather proof that could not be ignored or dismissed. Moving through the enemy encampment required skills that went far beyond anything in her official training records. Maya had spent years learning advanced infiltration techniques during classified courses that few knew existed. She altered her appearance with mud and debris, changing her posture and gait to blend with the local population. Her language skills, honed through countless hours of private study, allowed her to understand conversations that revealed tactical details. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to prove yourself when everyone had already counted you out? Maya was about to discover just how far her hidden abilities could take her as she moved deeper into territory where capture meant certain death. The woman her colleagues thought they knew was disappearing, replaced by someone far more capable and dangerous. The enemy compound buzzed with activity as Maya observed from her concealed position among the supply crates. Officers moved between buildings with urgent purpose, their conversations confirming her worst fears. The attack would come at first light, overwhelming her base with coordinated strikes from 3 directions. She watched as maps were distributed showing friendly positions marked with deadly precision, intelligence that could only have come from inside sources. Maya's training kicked in as she identified the command structure through careful observation. The colonel who led the briefing wore insignia she recognized from intelligence reports, a man responsible for multiple successful operations against coalition forces. She memorized faces, ranks, and unit designations, building a complete picture of the enemy leadership that would prove invaluable if she could somehow get this information back to friendly forces. A supply truck arrived at the compound gates, its driver speaking the local dialect Maya had mastered during her extensive language training. She made a split-second decision that would either save lives or cost her own. Moving with practiced stealth, she approached the vehicle as workers began unloading equipment. In perfect local accent, she called out to the driver, identifying herself as a new worker assigned to inventory duty. The deception worked flawlessly as Maya gained access to the command building itself. Inside, she discovered detailed battle plans, communication codes, and troop strength reports that painted a complete picture of the coming assault. But getting this intelligence back to her base would require crossing 50 miles of hostile territory while enemy forces prepared for their dawn attack. Time was running out, and Maya was still officially dead. Maya photographed the battle plans with equipment hidden in her gear, her hands steady despite the enormous risk. The command tent held intelligence that could save hundreds of lives, but every second she remained increased her chances of discovery. Enemy officers moved past her position as she worked, their conversations revealing final preparations for the assault. She had perhaps 2 hours before the attack began, and 50 miles of dangerous terrain lay between her and safety. A commotion outside the tent made her freeze as voices grew louder and more agitated. Someone had discovered the bodies of the guards she had been forced to neutralize during her infiltration. Maya heard boots running across the compound as alarm spread through the enemy forces. Her cover was blown, but the intelligence she carried was too valuable to abandon. She made the hardest decision of her military career, choosing mission completion over personal safety. Moving through the chaos of the alerted compound required every skill Maya had developed through years of specialized training. She scaled walls using techniques learned in advanced warfare courses, bypassed security systems with knowledge that went far beyond her official qualifications, and navigated hostile territory using survival skills that would have impressed her instructors. The woman her colleagues knew as a quiet analyst had become a lethal operative. What would you do if you discovered information that could save lives, but getting it to safety meant risking everything? Maya was about to find out as pursuit teams organized behind her. The race against time had begun, and failure meant not just her death, but the destruction of everyone she had sworn to protect. The mountain trail offered Maya her only escape route as enemy search teams fanned out across the valley below. She moved with desperate efficiency, using terrain features to mask her movement while maintaining the brutal pace necessary to reach base before dawn. Her lungs burned in the thin air, but the intelligence she carried drove her forward through exhaustion and pain. Behind her, vehicle engines roared to life as motorized pursuit units joined the hunt. Maya's survival training proved invaluable as she navigated treacherous cliff faces and hidden ravines that vehicles could not follow. She had memorized these mountains during reconnaissance missions, studying every peak and valley with the thoroughness that had made her reputation as an analyst. Now that knowledge became the difference between life and death as she found routes that existed only in her memory and on classified topographical surveys. The enemy forces had deployed tracking dogs, their baying echoing off the rocky walls as they followed her scent trail. Maya reached into skills learned during escape and evasion courses, using stream beds and rocky ground to break her trail while precious minutes ticked away. She calculated distances and timing with mathematical precision, knowing that the attack would begin regardless of whether she reached safety. Radio communications crackled from the pursuing forces, their voices revealing coordination between ground teams and air support. Maya realized that helicopters would be airborne within the hour, cutting off her remaining escape routes. She had to reach the base perimeter before full daylight, or the intelligence that could save hundreds of lives would die with her in these unforgiving mountains. Dawn approached as Maya reached the final ridge overlooking her base, the familiar outline of defensive positions visible in the growing light. But something was wrong. The base showed no signs of increased alert status, no additional sentries or defensive preparations. They had no idea what was coming, and Maya was still 2 miles away across open ground that offered little cover. The sound of helicopter rotors grew stronger behind her as enemy air assets closed the distance. Maya made a desperate calculation as she studied the terrain between her position and safety. The open valley floor would expose her to enemy fire, but the alternative routes would take too long. She could see enemy forces positioning themselves in the hills surrounding the base, their attack beginning to unfold exactly as the captured plans had indicated. Her friends and colleagues were about to face overwhelming odds without warning. The helicopter appeared over the ridge, its searchlight sweeping the mountainside as Maya pressed herself against the rocky ground. She had perhaps 10 minutes before the coordinated assault began, but the aircraft now blocked her direct route to the base. Drawing on skills that went far beyond anything in her official training record, Maya began to move through terrain that should have been impossible to navigate under enemy observation. Her body screamed in protest as she pushed through exhaustion and injury, but Maya refused to let the intelligence die with her. The base communications tower stood silhouetted against the sunrise, tantalizingly close yet still impossibly far. Enemy soldiers were moving into final assault positions as Maya prepared for the most dangerous sprint of her life across ground that offered no concealment or mercy. Maya burst through the base perimeter as the first enemy mortars began falling on the outer defenses. Guards who had mourned her death 48 hours earlier stared in shock as she stumbled past their positions, her uniform torn and bloodied but her grip firm on the intelligence packet that could save them all. She ran directly toward the command center as explosions erupted around the base, her voice hoarse as she shouted warnings about the coordinated attack. Colonel Martinez looked up from his morning briefing to see a ghost walking through his door. Maya Chen stood before him, alive and carrying intelligence that made his blood run cold as he realized the scope of the enemy assault already beginning. The woman he had written off as a competent but unremarkable analyst had somehow infiltrated enemy positions, gathered critical intelligence, and crossed 50 miles of hostile territory to deliver information that would change everything. Maya spread the captured battle plans across the colonel's desk, her voice steady despite her exhaustion as she briefed him on enemy positions, troop strengths, and attack vectors. The intelligence was incredibly detailed, showing not just what was happening but how the enemy had obtained such precise information about friendly positions. She had identified the security breach that had made this attack possible, information that could prevent future disasters. The base defense systems roared to life as Maya's intelligence allowed commanders to reposition forces and coordinate countermeasures. Enemy units that had expected surprise found themselves facing prepared defenses, their carefully planned assault disrupted by information they never expected anyone to possess. Maya had not just survived the impossible, she had turned the tide of battle through skills that redefined what everyone thought they knew about her. The battle raged for 6 hours, but Maya's intelligence had transformed certain defeat into decisive victory. Enemy forces found their surprise attacks met with prepared defenses, their communication frequencies jammed by equipment positioned according to her reconnaissance data. Colonel Martinez watched in amazement as his forces executed countermeasures that Maya had made possible, turning the enemy's own tactics against them with devastating effectiveness. Maya remained in the command center throughout the engagement, her expertise proving invaluable as she interpreted intercepted communications and predicted enemy movements with uncanny accuracy. Officers who had known her for years stared in wonder as she demonstrated capabilities that went far beyond anything in her official records. This was not the quiet analyst they remembered, but a highly trained operative whose true skills were finally being revealed. When the last enemy forces retreated in disarray, the base had not only survived but inflicted casualties that would cripple enemy operations for months. Maya's intelligence had identified supply depots, communication centers, and command structures that coalition forces immediately targeted with surgical precision. The woman presumed dead had delivered an intelligence coup that military historians would study for decades. General Harrison arrived by helicopter as news of the victory spread through coalition command. He had come to investigate reports of the remarkable intelligence breakthrough, but found something even more extraordinary. Maya Chen, the analyst who had supposedly died behind enemy lines, had not only survived but accomplished a mission that redefined what was possible for a single operative working alone in hostile territory. Sometimes the most important victories come from those we underestimate the most. General Harrison stood before the assembled base personnel as Maya received the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest military decoration for extraordinary heroism. Her actions had not only saved hundreds of lives but provided intelligence that reshaped coalition strategy across the entire theater of operations. The quiet analyst had become a legend, proving that heroism often comes from the most unexpected sources. Colonel Martinez approached Maya after the ceremony, his expression filled with newfound respect and curiosity. "Chen, I have to ask, where did you learn those skills? He said quietly. Maya smiled, her response revealing years of preparation that few had ever suspected. I requested additional training during every leave, sir. Survival courses, language immersion, advanced reconnaissance. I wanted to be ready if my country ever needed more than just analysis. The intelligence community took notice of Maya's extraordinary performance, offering positions that would utilize her proven field capabilities alongside her analytical skills. But Maya chose to remain with her unit, training other analysts in survival and infiltration techniques that could save their lives if they ever found themselves alone behind enemy lines. She had discovered that her true calling lay in preparing others for the impossible. Word of Maya's remarkable survival and intelligence coup spread throughout military circles, inspiring countless others who had been underestimated or overlooked. Her story became proof that extraordinary courage and capability can emerge from the most unlikely circumstances, transforming not just individual lives but entire operational concepts. Have you ever witnessed someone surprise everyone by revealing hidden strengths when it mattered most? Maya Chen had shown that sometimes the greatest heroes are hiding in plain sight, waiting for the moment when their true abilities can change everything.